What's up? Before, I only had this boring forest scene, and worse yet, a test scene. But now I have one of the first explorable areas for Spirit to visit, the Crimson Grasslands. So, let's get into how it was made. Hey y'all, what's going on? Kumo here, back with another devlog for Hollow Runes, finally. I know it's been a long time coming, you guys. It's been about 2 months or so since the last devlog, and I haven't really been super active on social media. I could bore you with all the rhetoric, I could tell you about all the personal stuff going on in my life, but instead of doing that, I want to let you guys know what I have been cooking up, and I hope this devlog really encapsulates that. So without further ado, let's jump right in. And really quickly, I just wanted to let you guys know, thank you so much for all the support. You guys have been super patient with me, and that means the absolute world, as always. So if you guys like my content and you're enjoying everything, consider subscribing and leaving a like. That means so much to me. I don't do this full time, though I would love to, but either way, just watching the video is enough support for me. Thank you all so much. Let's get on with it. So firstly, I started with a new scene. I wanted to keep everything grounded and in a fantasy setting at the same time, so I opted for some surrealism mixed with realism. I still wanted the player to recognize the environments and not be so out of place and out of touch that it doesn't make sense, but at the same time give a bit of a celestial feel to it. And that was when the first initial conception for the Crimson Grasslands came to be. Because, you know, adding red hue to everything just suddenly makes it more fantasy, right? So after setting the initial plane for my scene, I started to block out some simple geometries such as walls and basic hills just to constrain the area. I knew that I wanted to add a ledge that right when you entered the area you could see the rest of the landscape, so you can see me start to sculpt that now. Level design is a very iterative process for me, so I like to take things really slowly and one step at a time until I figure out exactly the geometry that I want to use and then work from there. So fast forward a couple hours and I started to have something that I was pretty comfortable with. I'm currently using Unity's built-in terrain system to create everything that you see here, to design the entire level layout, which certainly has a lot of benefits, but some caveats as well. For example, when you're messing with heights like this, you really want to make sure that everything is leveled perfectly because it's really not something easy to just reverse. As you can see, I'm starting to sculpt everything out prior, just to make sure everything fits in a good place. Alright, we are back a few hours later, and now that most of the important geometry is in place, not all, but most, we can finally start to begin painting our environment. Something that can be very difficult in level design is making sure that everything is very clear and concise to the player when they are first entering an area. So after outlining everything, I like to paint the textures in just to make sure everything looks and feels the way I want it to. For me, this is a very quick process because I obviously am going to make a lot of touches and changes later. So I like to draw everything in very crudely just so I have a visualization of what everything looks like. But while making a bunch of crudely drawn shapes is fun, much like Microsoft Paint could be fun, it's severely lacking in any sort of environmental detail at all. Unless of course you're into this kind of thing. I mean, I'm not going to judge, it's just a little minimalistic, you know? So what did I do about it? Well, I added foliage. I mean that one was pretty obvious, right? With, you know, all of the trees and grass in the opening. Anyway. With the framework laid out and everything coming together perfectly, now is the perfect time to add some of that sweet, sweet foliage to give the game a little pizzazz. Just a little something something to, you know, not make it look like the surface of Mars maybe. And what is a better place to start than adding some trees? Now I had some tree models already made from the test scene that I used before of the forest. And honestly, I thought they were already looking pretty nice, so I didn't really want to tinker with them too much. Instead, I just made some variations of the same tree and slapped on some new textures, and bam, we got trees, baby. Other than all these other new trees I also created at the same time. God, okay. But we still got trees, baby. And I know I'm summarizing this in about 5 seconds and making it seem a lot easier than it was, but honestly, this kind of took a long time. So I hope you guys enjoy them. I think it came out pretty dang nice, if I do say so. So then after looking at my highly detailed and comprehensive list of notes, I thought, what was the next best thing to add to populate this scene? And you guessed it, rocks. Now I'm gonna give you guys a little trade secret about rocks, all right? Aspiring game developers would pay a fortune for this kind of information. Are you ready? The secret to making the perfect rocks is you just kind of take a circle and then you kind of elongate it a little bit, maybe cut some edges out. I mean, it's actually really easy. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you think there was more to that? No, rocks are actually, pretty easy to make. I just kind of smoothed mine out to make them match the aesthetic of the game. And bam, rocks. Though on a more serious note, I will say texturing the rocks was actually a ton of fun. All of the texturing done in my test scene was hand painted in Blender and it did not look good at all. I did not know what I was doing. It kind of just felt like I was drawing within the lines of a coloring book. But this time I used Substance Painter for every single one of my 3D models. And let me just say, it is absolutely life-changing. I went for more of a painterly look to match the aesthetics of the game, but you can honestly do so much with the product and I'm super happy that I added it to my collection. Also, shout out to Stylized Station because they are killing it with the texturing game and they give awesome little tips and tricks if you're trying to make anything, stylized. So definitely check them out. And hey, if you like this video, why not give it a like? Share it with your friends, your family. I'm sure grandma would love to see a random YouTuber on the internet making video games. And why stop there? You can always subscribe for more content if you like what you see. Anyway, on with the program. Now to get back into it. We have our scene, we have our trees, we have our rocks, but we're missing something. And if you don't know what that thing is, let me give you a little hint. You see that right there? Yes, leaves. Because, it's all well and good to just have these regular ass trees without any color, But don't worry, friends, I did not forget about talking about the leaves, but rather to talk about leaves is also to talk about bushes. And to talk about both of those things, I want to go backwards a little bit and talk to you guys about LODs. Now, if you don't know what LODs are, it refers to level of detail. I'm sure you've seen many examples of this in older games, but essentially what it is the distance that you are away from the object in the game dictates the level of detail that you are seeing that object in. i.e., you are very close to the object, so it is going to render fully at the capacity to which the object was created. One of the ways that this works is a game developer will create multiple instances of the same object with different levels of detail or different polygon counts. So you don't have 10 million polygons all happening at the same time because that ruins performance and it makes the game basically unplayable. So the necessity for LODs is very strong for any game that's really not 2D, I would say. And so on top of all the trees that you see, there is also 2 other versions of the same tree, but clumped together as one game object. Now, the way my LODs are set up is, like I said before, I have 3 different instances of the same tree, meaning that I created every single tree that I showed you earlier 3 separate times with 3 different levels of quality. Now, that first level of quality is what I want the players to see. It has the highest polygon count, meaning it is the least performant, but as long as too many are not shown at the same time, it is still performant and it makes the game run a lot more smoothly while still immersing the player into the game world. The second level of quality, which is LOD 1, the first being LOD 0, is slightly lower in quality, and you might see a few in the distance, but at the same time, it's not going to ruin immersion. Now, LOD 2, or the third level of quality for my trees, looks like absolute shit. And so we want to stick that bad boy as far away from the player as humanly possible. We do not want the player to run into an LOD 2. So they will never see it on screen other than for basically just background. And this is the way that a lot of games deal with having so many assets all on the screen at the same time. LODs, baby. It's the name of the game. Obviously, this is not a tutorial channel. This is, my personal devlog, but at least know that they are present in my game and it makes the game more performant. Hopefully you found that interesting. If you didn't, at least you learned something. So bam, LODs. And thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Now, Kumo, I hear you saying. You mentioned earlier that leaves and bushes have everything to do with LODs. And well, that's not fully accurate. I think it is very relevant to talk about LODs when you're speaking about very performant heavy game assets, and trees can be one of them, specifically because I'm rendering every single leaf individually. And so the way that this all comes together is leaves can be very heavy on the CPU, especially when you have a bunch of trees in your scene at the same time. And so for the creation of the trees, I have different levels of LOD for the leaves as well. I would say about roughly 300 or so for the regular tree, and then I essentially divide that number in two for each subsequent LOD. And then for the bushes, I mean, it's basically the same thing. I used a custom shader graph to simulate wind for both the leaves and the bushes, and they basically follow the same exact premise. So sick. Now we have a bunch of foliage. And to speed things up for brevity's sake, the grass was made in a very similar way. I did not use LODs because Unity actually has a built-in feature to make grass a lot more performant in the engine already. So I didn't really tinker with it too much, and I just placed grass pretty much everywhere. Things started to get a little slow at times, but I just needed to check a few boxes, fill a couple lines in, and it honestly works fine. The biggest obstacle, honestly, with the grass was making it simulate in a realistic way that I was happy with. And honestly, I'm really happy with the result, and I think I accomplished that. I think it still keeps a very stylized feel while not being overbearing as well. But all right, friends, the moment of truth. We got our trees equipped with leaves, we made our rocks, we have our bushes, and finally we have the grass. So here's a little showcase just to show you all the assets that I am currently using in this scene, all put on display so you can see that honestly, I'm not really using a lot of assets, but at the same time, there's a lot of work that goes into just being able to create a handful of game objects to put into your game world. And so now that you see everything lined up, we can finally get to the main sauce of this devlog, showing off the final product. Oh, and I added some water as well. It was honestly just a quick shader graph, nothing to see here. But now we can finally showcase the final result of the Crimson Grasslands. So cue the music and enjoy. Well, that wrapped up another devlog. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed the content. And just so you guys know, I do have a Discord as well. We are a small community, but we are growing, baby, and I would love to see you guys in it. So consider joining. Link is in the description. But like always, you guys, until next time, cheers.